Arsenic for Tea, Chapter 11. Daisy climbed the stairs to the nursery, but her mouth was pinched and her fists were clenched, and I could tell that she was still going over and over what we had seen in the library. "Are you all right, Daisy?" asked Beanie, peering at her. "Your face is red." "I'm quite all right," said Daisy, snapping to attention. "The library was hot, that's all." "We saw Mr. Curtis just now," said Kitty. "He was looking awfully cross about something. Is he all right?" "Ha!" said Daisy before she could stop herself. I'm sure he is." "He had that glorious watch of his out again," Kitty went on. "Your Aunt Saskia was there too, and she was simply ogling it. It was quite funny to watch. She was like a cat staring at a bird." "But it's Mr. Curtis's," said Beanie, shocked. Kitty sighed, and even Daisy grinned briefly. Beanie is so beautifully honest that she thinks the rest of the world must be too. "Excited about your birthday tomorrow?" asked Kitty. "I simply adore birthdays. So many presents." "I suppose so," said Daisy vaguely. "The birthday party, a children's tea. I don't know how old Mummy thinks I am." Of course, she wasn't really cross with her mother because of the birthday tea. It was the library, I knew, and I felt awful for her. She couldn't even breathe a whisper about it to the others. If Kitty knew, we would be hearing about it all weekend, and the whole school would know about it as soon as summer term began. So I was not at all surprised when Daisy made an excuse to leave Kitty and Beanie changing in the nursery while we went to brush our teeth in the upstairs bathroom even. The upstairs bathroom is just as faded as the rest of Fallingford. Its white porcelain is all cracked, and there's a rusty ring around the edge of the clawed bath. The tap drips, and a green stain wriggles all the way down from the top of its chain into the hole where the water runs away like the ghost of a worm. "Are you all right?" I asked as soon as we had pushed the bolt to behind us and turned on the water. It gulped and hissed and quite drowned out our voices to anyone trying to listen. Daisy waved her hands and sat down on the edge of the bathtub. "Of course I am," she said. "Don't concern yourself about that. I've been considering what we have discovered so far, and it seems to me that since Mr. Curtis is in this house for nefarious purposes, what we saw in the library today is simply more evidence of his wicked plans. He has clearly decided to trick my mother into falling in love with him, so she'll believe all our nice things are worthless. And as I said before, Mummy's often not all that bright about people. We must consider her the victim and Mr. Curtis the very cunning criminal." "But, Daisy," I said, "it still happened." "Well, yes, it happened, but it doesn't mean anything, Hazel. As soon as we unmask Mr. Curtis for the villain he is, Mummy will come to her senses, what she has of them, and go back to Daddy. So you see, it's more imperative than ever that we uncover enough evidence to show to Uncle Felix, and we do it as quickly as possible." I looked at Daisy. Her eyes were glittering and her cheeks were pink. This was Daisy with a plan. But although I agreed with her about Mr. Curtis, I was still terribly worried. I could see that she was up to her old tricks again, trying to make the evidence fit the way she hoped it would. No matter the reason why Mr. Curtis had kissed Daisy's mother, he'd still done it, and Daisy's mother had kissed him back. I remembered all the arguments between Lord and Lady Hastings that week, and knew that whatever Daisy said, the situation between them was very serious indeed. What if Daisy's mother wanted to run away with Mr. Curtis? What would Daisy do then? "So, Watson," said Daisy, "we must absolutely watch Mr. Curtis like hawks tomorrow. We can't let him out of our sight." "But it's your birthday," I said. "Never mind birthdays. Some things are more important. Besides, I've had plenty of birthdays already." There was a sudden banging on the door. "Let us in, Squashy, you horror," shouted Bertie. "Don't be an ass. Come out. What are you doing in there?" "Brushing our teeth, of course," shouted Daisy. "Oh, all right, we're coming out." She unlocked the door and we went out onto the landing. Bertie was there, arms crossed, and beside him was Stephen. I blushed to be seen coming out of a bathroom by two boys, but Daisy merely sniffed and looked unconcerned, as though she had just emerged from a ballroom. "You're a queer fish, Squashy," said Bertie when he saw us. "I heard the two of you talking. What was it about?" "You and how vile you are," said Daisy rudely. "Poor old Stephen forced to spend time in your odious presence. Now clear off and stop sticking your nose in." Bertie scowled and made a horrible face at her, but Stephen smiled at me. I still felt rather awkward, but I smiled back. "Why does he call you Squashy?" I asked curiously when we were back in the nursery. Beanie, who was already in bed, waved at us. "According to him, I was a fat baby," said Daisy. "That isn't true, of course. I was perfect. And anyway, he had to wear an eye patch for his squint until he was 10. He thinks it's terribly amused me to call me that name now, but if he ever gets engaged, I shall call him Squinty in front of his fiancée, and we'll see if she still wants to marry him then." Daisy put on her nightie and got into her bed, which creaked under her. She blew out the candle on her bedside table, a funny three-legged thing which had once been green, but was now not much of anything, rolled over so that her nose was against the peeling yellow wallpaper, a circus scene with elephants and lions and ringmasters chasing each other in circles, and began to breathe as though she were asleep. Kitty crept into Beanie's bed to whisper with her, but I knew that Daisy was still very much awake. I wanted to speak to her, but was not quite sure what I should say. I thought of my bedroom at home, all smooth and white, with the fan going round and round soothingly above my head, and the voices and chiming glasses from my parents' drinks parties drifting up the stairs. Here the blankets itched, and though I had 3 of them, I still shivered. The nursery walls were all crooked, the house creaked and grumbled, and something shrieked outside. I remembered the first night I had spent here, when I thought it was a baby, but Daisy told me it was only a fox. All at once I longed to go home. It was odd, because I should have been enjoying myself. It was the Holes and I was with Daisy, after all, but I was feeling more and more homesick. Suddenly I couldn't wait until Daisy's party was over.